I know this last week's newsletter maybe was a little on the provocative side. I mean, saying you can't spreadsheet grief, you can't project plan fear, change isn't a process, it's people. The reality is, I, as a change manager and a project manager, have been faced time and time again with this fact that we think a methodology is going to make it work. And the true honesty in every change I've ever been in situation is that it's never really the process that fails. It's the people who the process leaves behind. Those people are failed by the process because the process alone doesn't do it. And I think a lot of the times in change, we do fail because we treat the change as though it has a checklist that we can order and prioritize, and then we can just execute. The problem is people in times of change really need time. I'm going through a massive change. I'm in the midst of a move, and I have moved a lot in my life, but every single move represents a massive amount of change. I'm moving my desk, my office, the way that I sort of show up with you. Everything's getting moved. My home is moving. All of my possessions are moving. And I recognize as I stare down the time frame and the milestones and recognize that I'm getting closer and closer, I am feeling resistance. And it's actually, if I think about it, fear. It's fear of the unknown because I don't know what my life is going to be like after this next change. That doesn't mean I won't know everything. It just means that some of that I'm not going to understand. The way I get up, do my thing, end of the day, all of those habits, all of those behaviors are going to be pushed in this change. And I'm afraid of it. And when I expect myself to be more change ready, to have more prepared, when I put the pressure on myself to expect more than I emotionally can actually handle, um, I put myself in a disadvantaged position. And I know that this example and my personal example is that it's a personal example, but change is the same. We never cease to be human. It doesn't matter whether you're at work or whether you're at home. All of those environments, everywhere we find ourselves, we never cease to be human. And change is tough. And you know what? I am a change manager who believes in Prosi ADKAR's approach, and I've used it. The idea that basically we all go through change through these five elements, and it starts with awareness. Are we aware we need to change? And if we are, then we usually skip over that one pretty quickly because if the awareness is there, that's not where we get stuck. The next one is desire. Do we desire to change? Well, yeah, I'm the one who chose to make this move. I don't have to move if I don't want to, but I'm choosing it. So, yeah, my desire to make the move, to make the change, that's not where I'm stuck. But the next one, which is knowledge, this is where I'm stuck because knowledge is about knowledge of how the change is going to go, knowledge of how the change will be, what the future state will be. This is where I'm stuck. This is where I personally am experiencing fear. And in any change, whether it's at an organizational or personal level, one of these five, the next two are ability and then reinforcement, any one of those five in that order become the place where we're stuck. So, I'm afraid I don't know what it's going to be like. And what is that driving me to do? It's driving me to think differently. It's driving me to get on Pinterest and research furniture and storage and a whole bunch of things because where I am now, everything fits. And where I am going, is everything going to fit? Or if it will fit, is it going to look the way I want it to look? And it is the knowledge of all of those pieces that I lack right now. And that's where I'm stuck on the model. There's nothing wrong with the model. What's wrong is change is still really hard. And my fear feels like resistance, and the resistance I have feels like fear. And I think in a professional environment, particularly when it comes to change management, we need to talk about what is true. We need to be open to discussing our fear. And, if it is really true, which is we can't process our way through our emotions because that's not the way it works in our species as humans. And if we can't spreadsheet grief, because I'm literally going to go through this grief of, well, the grief of having to pack everything up, but then the grief or the loss experience of the change itself. I'm no longer going to live where I live now. And that means I'm going to lose the habits and the behaviors and the normal that I've experienced here. It is in that I recognize that the models actually don't make the change in people. It's leaders or it's the people that we make the change with that actually change people. It is in our relationship to one another. It is when I talk to my partner, I share my insecurities, and his perspective is different than mine. It is when I share it with other family members, and their perspective is very different. In fact, sometimes they come across with innovation and creative ideas that actually end up making me feel, not perfect in what the future holds, but definitely more aware that there's going to be opportunity here. But it's the people and the connection and the way I feel connected to those people who will hear me out and will create space for me. This is where change is done. This is where we make the big shift. So, the feisty way to lead change, what I have learned is we have to see resistance as normal. And we also need to call it what it is, which is fear. We need to not use a word like resistance to change because in reality, it softens the actual emotion. And I think the emotion is fear. People are afraid. And let's call it what it is. So we need to think of that resistance and we need to call it fear. And we need to recognize it's a signal that emotions are running high and the humans need something different from us. We need to be empathetic. We need to be anchored in empathy. Yes, as leaders and as change leaders, but just as humans, understanding that people go through really tough times. When you find yourself in the shit, it's actually really healthy to share that with someone else. And inevitably, they're going to say to you, oh my gosh, I totally relate. It's not the same situation. It may not have the same elements, but they will be able to have empathy towards you because if you share your shit with them, I guarantee you, will have some to share back with you. And we need to remember that change actually has to happen at a pace and a cadence that makes sense to the emotions and the people. And organizations are talking about shit. Organizations are shit at this because organizations want to focus on the bottom line. The reality is your bottom line will be grossly affected by the fact that people can't make the change at the pace you want. So the more you push, the further those people will dig themselves in, the longer the change adoption will take. And you know what? Some people go really fast in change. Great, wonderful. Work with them. But the ones that go slower, it doesn't mean that they're not going to make the change with us. It just means we need to do a pace of change that's going to be supportive and empathetic. And then, it's really important for us as change leaders anyway, to not take it personally that people react this way to change because they're afraid. I mean, if I can tell you, the feisty PM, that I'm afraid of the next 3 weeks of my life because I'm going to go through massive change, then we need to be honest with ourselves about the fact that there's fear here and that's a human emotion and it's okay. A lot of times we want to blame people for not making good change because we think that, well, they're just being stubborn. But it's not stubbornness. It's genuine emotion. And people need to be led through that and they need to be feeling valued, seen, and supported. Because change and disruption doesn't actually break relationships. What breaks the relationships during those times is the way we dismiss people's emotions. That's what does it. So let's just stop doing that. Let's start being candid and share with one another our truth. Let's call out fear when we know that's what it is. And let's be genuine and human and recognize processes can't do the work for us. They're just tools. The work is in the human connection.